Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the RSCS Technical Webinar Series. I'm Lori Schiavo, RSCS's Executive Vice President, and I want to welcome everyone to tonight's webinar titled HC Refrigerants in Service Training, presented by RSCS's Region 2 Director, Art Miller, CMS RCT. Art's extensive background in the industry began in 1972, providing training and field service support for York Air Conditioning and Gibson products. He then began a 37-year career as an instructor at the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. During his years at CCAC, he continued to operate his own appliance service business, which developed into a long-term consulting role in the industry. Before we get started tonight, I want to thank Embraco for sponsoring tonight's webinar. Their generous support is how we keep these webinars free for RSCS members, and we value their shared commitment to educating HVACR professionals. Tonight's presentation will last about 45 minutes, and then there will be a Q&A session at the end. You can submit any questions you have throughout the presentation using the GoToWebinar dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. As always, I'll field the questions aloud to our presenter, and he will answer them as he receives them. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available online for viewing at your convenience as soon as possible. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter for the evening, Mr. Art Miller.
Do you see it there, Laurie?
I do see it. Just put it in presentation mode and you'll be good to go.
Okay.
I see all the slides on the side too.
All right. I'm in presentation mode. The only thing is I'm running dual monitor, so that may be a problem.
Okay, can you pick the other monitor?
Not that easily. Huh. Okay. Well, we can go with what you see here.
Okay, can you make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see it okay? I should have checked with you in advance on that. I was thinking that might have happened here at the end here. Okay. That's okay. It's happened before. Typically there's where you can pick which screen you're seeing. Oh, there you go. That's bigger.
Is that going to work?
That can work, yes. There you go. That's a little bit better.
All right, we'll do it that way. You'll lose some of the graphics, some of that, but that doesn't matter. We'll work through that. Okay, we're going to, all right, hydrocarbon refrigerant training this evening. Thanks for being on board here this afternoon or this evening, whatever time frame you're in. What we want to look at here is hydrocarbons as refrigerants. We're going to look at the hydrocarbon regulations and standards, the refrigerant properties and safety, servicing procedures, cylinder storage and transport, and tools for hydrocarbons. That's a lot of information. We're going to simply go over this fairly quickly. There's a lot more information in the hydrocarbon manual that RSCS produces. The purpose of any training, in this case especially, is for best safe working practices. In this case, with the approved flammable refrigerants, the four of which you see there, R290 propane, R600A isobutane, R441A, which is a flammable blend, and we'll see that here in a few minutes as to what's in it, and then R170 ethane. Now, the EPA is not requiring training, but they did say this in their information coming from the government, that it says, quote unquote, the agency recommends that anyone servicing appliances with a flammable refrigerant receive appropriate training and follow industry best practices. And I'm going to address that as well a little bit later on. But the EPA is suggesting that you get the training, it says requiring it. Why use the flammable refrigerants? You can see here that hydrocarbons are naturally occurring substances. They perform very well with good capacity and efficiency. In some cases, we're seeing efficiencies of 30 to 40% increases, and even higher than that. They're available for a very wide range of applications. We're going to look at some of the applications pretty soon, but we are able to use them in air conditioning all the way down to cascade systems. So that's the wide range of temperatures in our industry. And there are hydrocarbons available for any of those ranges. They have a very low environmental impact. The ODP is 0 and the GWP is less than 3. They are compatible with copper and standard mineral oils. Now, the manufacturers are not using the mineral oils, but to state it that they are available with the mineral oils and do work well with them. Servicing procedures may remain largely the same as for the fluorocarbon refrigerants, except safety considerations, and we're going to see a thread of safety throughout the entire presentation this evening. We go back to April the 10th of 2015, and we need to look at what the EPA approved back in that time frame, just a few years ago. And the EPA approved R290 propane. They approved 600A isobutane. They approved R170 ethane, and they approved the R441A, which is the blend. And you can see that all 4 of those refrigerants in there basically are hydrocarbons, and propane is the largest amount in terms of percent. Now, what are the EPA approved applications and the limits? The EPA approved these 3 refrigerants, 290, 600A, and 441A, for new household refrigerators and freezers and combination refrigerator freezers. And effective as September the 7th of 2018, the charge size went from 2 ounces to 5.3 ounces, or 150 grams. That is for new household refrigerator freezers. What's missing is R170. It was not approved for household refrigerators. In a few minutes, you'll see why that's the case. This is for new. You cannot retrofit using any of these hydrocarbon refrigerants. The same 3 now can be used for retail food refrigerator freezers. That's your standalone retail food refrigeration equipment with a maximum charge of 150 grams. Again, the same 3 can be used for vending machines with a 150 gram maximum charge. And here's where R170 plays in now, because it can be used in new, very low temperature refrigeration equipment where you see the temperatures are minus 170 degrees or colder, as well as the non-mechanical heat transfer systems, which are the thermosiphon systems with a maximum charge of 150 grams currently. These 2 refrigerants, which means 600A and 170, are missing, but these 2 refrigerants can be used in residential and light commercial equipment for self-contained room air conditioners, like the PTACs, PTHPs, window units, and portable units. Notice that the maximum charge is actually based now on not ounces, but on the actual BTU hour rating of the unit. And there are charts and tables which we have available that will show you what the charge would be for the different capacities of those units. Now move forward to January the 3rd of 2017. From 2015, the EPA approved additionally R290 for very low temperature refrigeration equipment with temperatures of minus 170 degrees or colder. Remember, that was R170 before. Now R290 has been approved for that temperature range. It's also been approved for commercial ice machines with a maximum charge of 150 grams, as well as water coolers with a maximum charge of 60 grams. So there you have the refrigerants and the applications and the charges. But there's a news flash that just came across. You'll notice here, effective May 9th, 2019. That was just last week, where the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, announced the approval from their organization of increasing the charge limit for the A3 flammable refrigerants from 150 grams, 5.3 ounces, to 500 grams, or 17.6 ounces. That was just approved last week. How that plays out with the EPA obviously is going to remain to be seen. But the point is that we've been looking for this increase for some time now, from a maximum of 150 to 300 to 500, and they approved it to 500. Hot off the press. So what technician servicing procedures need to change with this introduction of flammable refrigerant? Keeping safety, being more safety conscious, I think you'll see as we work through the material here. What labeling needs to be applied to all the hydrocarbon equipment from the manufacturer? The manufacturer must provide labeling on this equipment, and the EPA gives a directive on that. the directive is that on any piece of equipment, A, there has to be a label on or near any evaporators that can be contacted by the consumer, and that label, I'm not going to read all that to you, but it would state basically a flammable refrigerant is being used. Notice that B and C, that there have to be 2 additional labels at 2 different locations near the machine compartment, so stating the same thing, that there is a flammable refrigerant being used. On the exterior of the refrigerator, likewise. And then near any and all exposed refrigerant tubing, there has to be a label with a certain amount of information that the EPA has given the manufacturers to put on their equipment. So on a hydrocarbon piece of equipment, you have 5 labels. Now, in addition to that, the refrigerator or freezer must have red Pantone matching system PMS 185 marked pipes, hoses, and other devices through which the refrigerant is serviced, typically known as the service port, to indicate the use of a flammable refrigerant. And there is the PMS 185 color. Here's one manufacturer's way of putting this on here, and that is showing 2 red flags on the 2 process tubes. In addition to that, the compressor has to have the label on as to the type of refrigerant that is used, that compressor is used with. So as a service technician, if you're looking at the system label and the compressor label and they don't match, someone has done something they shouldn't have. Now, the information that the EPA has given us, they say there's some additional information that we want to tell you about, and there are several slides of further information, and one of those is the technician should wear the appropriate PPE, including chemical goggles and protective gloves. In addition to that, they say that only technicians specifically trained in handling flammable refrigerants should service these systems. So what I want to address here is that the EPA under Section 608, we do not have to be certified under Section 608. There is no certification for hydrocarbon refrigerants. Anybody can work on hydrocarbon systems. You do not need to be certified. Now, having said that, the EPA is saying here, only technicians specifically trained in handling flammable refrigerants should service these systems. So what I would suggest is that you would go to the RSES online training, go through the course, take the exam at the end, and pass it. When you pass it, you will get a certificate, not a certification. You will get a certificate that shows that you have been trained in handling these flammable refrigerants, as per further information that the EPA is suggesting here. The EPA is also saying you need to be familiar with flammable refrigerants for fire and explosions. Actually, that black box would be an explosion if I had this set up and we could see the full screen. In addition, the EPA is also saying you need to know the information that comes from the manufacturer. In other words, read the manual first, unlike many of us in the industry where we read the manual after everything else fails. So they're suggesting we need to make sure we know what's in that manual and how that equipment operates. Likewise, they're saying that the room occupants should evacuate the space immediately following the accidental release of a flammable refrigerant. Now, the key word here is accidental. If you have 2 ounces of refrigerant in the system and that is released, that is certainly not an accidental release in the sense that it may need immediate evacuation. But if you have your 14-ounce cylinder of propane and the top, something happens to it, or the hose, something happens to the leaking, all that 14